Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel is Discerning What is True. I am broadcasting today on the 17th day of December 2023. I'm sharing my information that is with YouTube today. I'm going to be reading chapter 10, which is called The King, of the book called The Sacred Science for Rene Schwaller. I hope that all are doing well today. Um, we've received quite a bit of rain today, actually almost 2.7 inches of rain has fell from last night to today. So I think this is a record at my house. Approximately close to 58 inches of rain has fell at my house this year. But you have to understand, I live on what I call sand here, so it just sort of goes into the ground, if you know what I mean. But anyway, let's get into the particular book here, Sacred Science, and the title is The King. The royal principle on which ancient Egypt was founded has nothing in common with our usual concept of king. It is never a human being that is involved. A particular man such as France Louis Charles or Francois, the reigning king, is a symbol, a guise embodying the mythical and mystical as well as the hermetic sense of our ray of original light corporation, the Horan Logos. Through his fall into nature, the creative word is imprisoned in earth by Seth, as neither this fire in earth is pot. The Greek Hephaestos, the king, is animated by the Horanian or Luciferian aspects of the fallen archangels. Temple rituals explain the royal fulfillment of the Horanian light through the phases it must undergo on the way to its corporate exaltation. The philosopher's stone, as it was called in medieval times, this is the king of divine origin, almighty in things of creative nature. Titles and qualities are attributed to the reigning king. They describe what he symbolizes in the phases of becoming. Through this symbolism of the object of sacred science, a bond is maintained that ties the esoteric meaning of the myth, basis of religion, to science in general, as well as to the king as head of the social organization. This is the true meaning of theocratic order, not to be confused with a royalty directed by a religious organization. The royal progression in the successive of its stages, from its origins to the former accomplishments, namely the work of its realization as described by the ritual, is reproduced in the table of mystic names, showing the genealogy of the kings of this empire, a gestation of the incarnate spirit for which the king symbolizes the end to be attained by all mortals. Anthropomorphius must fulfilled. The course of this aim is charted by religious teachings and sustained by ever-present example. This is the positive way to travel the most abstract of paths. What this reigning king represents as a man is almost secondary. Yet history shows that severe distinction is always drawn at the time of inhumation between the worthy king and the king of lesser worth. But it is always the royal principle which officiates in the daily ritual of the temple, the king as priest and the priest as king. As parallelism appears to exist between the pharaonic royal principle and the king of Hermetic tradition, as he is described in all serious texts concerning these questions. On both sides, the same qualifications and identical enigmas are found. A distinction is, of course, a distinction is, of course, to be made between the historical and the purely hierarchical symbolic aspect. It is to the latter that the temple is dedicated with all that is comprised architectural colonnades, obelisks, bas reliefs, statuaries, colors, and materials. Everything has its purpose. I'm just saying something here. Everything has its purpose here. Colors, whatever is done on purpose by the Egyptians in the past. It was done for um, to help people to realize who they are and to come to the idea simply is that they need to ascend. They need to move forward. And it seems as though this particular government at that time, before I think it's the 18th dynasty or 17th dynasty, I get confused, when Akhenaten came into power, um, which very few people know. Many people think Akhenaten is some type of alien. I'm sorry, folks, but that's not the truth. Okay, you have people who are hoodwinking you everywhere, especially at this time, to sell a book. And this is where we live at. We live in an age that basically very few people know or even are searching for the truth, or they think they're searching for the truth. And reality simply is all these hoodwinks out here who say a little bit of truth, but yet most of it is false. And it's it's so clear, especially with the media and what is on the radio waves or whatever's on the internet, whatever. It's you see this everywhere. Um, As we are conditioned and imprisoned in material form in the corporate universe, we are unable to envision the problem of beginning other than by positioning as the source of all things a state which lies outside of the universe. That would be the one and all through one. Two essential lines stem from this initial proposition, either spontaneous generation or in order becoming in time, a ordinance which will necessarily necessitate be the law applicable to everything. Each phase in this case is a final stage, contributing to the realization of a faculty virtually implied to the nature of the cause. Each final stage is an end in itself in the realms of the mineral, the plant, the animal, and the human animal. These stages are symbols, that is, formal words of the law, which participate in the latter total expression. This can only be the fulfillment of all virtualities immanent in the cause. Cosmic man is this fulfillment, the anthropopodius, whose image is the king. The stages in time are the hieroglyphs, whereas the symbolization of functional definitions yields the elements of myth. In the course of incarnations or corporative becoming, there are two lineages whose replica is found in human gestation. One is the white lunar, the white that is the viable infant of 7 months term. The other is the red solar, the completely embryo of 9 months term. These two finalities are represented by the white and the red crowns, not clowns, crowns, CROWNS. The white crown significates corporification, the first great finality of becoming. The second finality, the red crown, begins the return of the corporate to its exegetical source. One phrase needs the other as they define one another. In the symbolic history of the Pharaonic Empire, as well as in the history of the myth, we find the analysis of this becoming in every uses of each phase. Only by seeing ancient Egypt in this light can be the formidable maze of its history be cleared. The social organizations, the myths, the so-called religious crisis, the dynasty chronological, the pictures writing, and the teachings and of the monuments. This is not a matter of philosophy. In very general lines, such considerations need no explanation for its acceptance. It finds proof in the natural fact of every procreation and becomes a science if this becoming can be experimentally proved, starting from a beginning, that is, from a universe genesis. This would mean capturing energy in its pure and unpolarized state, that is, a irrational endeavor, and corporifying it in order to use it as a universal source of a first generation. Its specifications depending upon the coincidence of cosmic harmony. This proposition poses spontaneity, albeit masterdo, generation as a starting point for an ordered genesis. The temple professes to possess this knowledge of causes. This excludes philosophy, as the later pertains only to a search for knowledge. In Egypt, thinking remains technical and not academic. The source of origin is the only abstraction, whereas all that follows is linked by a logic, which is not synergistic, but vital. Everything that we know, everything that we now know concerning the Pharaonic Empire confirms such a position. The variations and varieties of species and genre are the effects of harmonic coordinates explained and ordered by number. Conditions such as these rule a mentality no longer sharing common ground with ours. The myth situates the moments of harmonic activity which are purely functional. Judgment and thought are no longer concerned with facts that are concretely linked, but with types of functions that produce effects. This can be expressed in a popularized fashion as the neater so and so does such and such, produces this or that phenomenon. The sage knows what is meant, but for the people in general, there are symbolic federations of these powers, such as Aman and Mentu, periods of the surreal procession plot, that is the Brahman fire and emanating seed. Osiris, the cycle principle of seasonal or cosmic rebirth. Seth, the destructive fire. Horus, generating and emanating fire. Seth-Human is the devouring Aphrodite, which through desire can become regenerate as Hathor, H-A-T-O-H-O-R. Nemu, the specifying form that is giver, and so on, each function having its name. In order to complete the symbolism, those types are chosen from living nature in which functions are most specifically incarnated. In the social order, the incarnated king stands for corporification and universal source which will clothe itself in all the aspects of his activity, thereby justifying his mystic name. Indeed, for a full understanding, the meaning of the name must be read. It is not sufficient merely to incidate the name as usual done. For example, we have said that Amun is the energetic, that is the stellar millennial, for the period when the sun rises in the constellation of Aries at the moment of the vernal equinox. Plot signifies, that is fire falling into earth, the fall into earth of the Kabbalah faithless archangel. The reversal of PTH into HTP, Pot into Hotep, clarifies the meaning of Amen Hotep. The reversal into Amon of the fire falling into earth, a spiritualization of that fire. Adam Adhan means glorification of the sun, that is the physical disk, D-I-S-K. Tut on Aman, the corporification of stabilization of Amon's life. Thronemus, the corporate birth of thought, that is Hermes. And Sin Nafir, the two energies, La Mes, meaning birth of the moon. There are different royal genealogies and knowledge of the analyzed genetic sequence of the whole amount to knowing the dynasty chronological. The thoughts are part of the Amenhotep dynasty. Later comes Hormahel, an allegation of, or what we call our feast of Horus, the solar Saint John, the herald who would prepare the coming of the Ramses, for Ramses is the birth of Ra. These are mythical names of the kings. Next section calls itself the royal names. To name means calling into existence and knowing. Pharaonic tradition seems to indicate that the mother's first words upon birth of the child form the name to be given to this incarnated being. As far as the king is concerned, it must be well understood that the heavens are the mother, figured by the conjunction of the starry skies. Today, this would be called the synthetic character of the child's astrological theme. The king is in many cases a symbol of the cosmic king. He is always, first of all, a Horus in one of the specified astrological aspects. This is his Horus name, supported by the Ka symbol. His second name situates him at the incarnation of the two initial principles. It is the name of the two goddesses, the Cobra. I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm going to say Uatchet, Yatet, of the north and the vulture Nehebri of the south. The third name lends the king the aspect of the golden Horus, the perfect Horus, and no longer the universal Horus. He is next called Master of the Two Lands and symbolized by the Baruch of the south and the Bee of the north. Lastly, he is designated as Son of Ra, the solar principle incarnated. These are the five titles of the royal protocol. The first designation of N as Horus must have a horoscopic meaning. The three names that follow define the king's development. The second brings into mind the Tum of origin as primordial earth. It spells out the two perfections which generate the golden Horus. Only the latter can have dominion over the two realizations, the high white crown and the low red crown. This second name is dominated by the two principles of origin. They can be Seth and Horus, which would insinuate duality, or else the two puissances of the magical fire adoring the king's forehead, the vulture and the cobra representing on two baskets. The vulture tail is placed on the cobra's basket to evoke the idea of junction. Egyptologist expressed astonishment at the terms in which the title and praises of the king of Upper and Lower Egypt are couched. The enumeration of the qualities in such exaggerated terms and in this dithyrambic form seem inadmissible for a mere mortal king. When the king is compared to the sun and to Horanian perfection, such flattery might be described to Oriental custom. An example of this can be seen in the poem addressed to King Seti II on the occasion of his accession by an official of the treasury, stating this, quote, "Turn thy face towards me, thy rising sun, Sun, who lights the two lands with thy beauty, thy son of men who drives the darkness from Egypt. Thy dust appear as thy father, Ra, who rises in the sky. The rays penetrate down into the caverns, and there is no place devoid of thy beauty. All that happens in every land is told thee. When thou art resting in the palace, thou dost hear the words of all the lands, for thou hast millions of ears. Thine eye is clearer than the stars of heaven. The vision is superior to the sun's. Whatever is said, even by one whose mouth be in the cavern, it reaches thy ear, and if something hidden is done, thy eye will nevertheless behold it, O Seth. Thou, the master of beauty, thou who creates the breach." The poem, stripped of its emphasis, could indeed very well give it to understanding what the people have a right to expect from their sovereign. The king knows all, hears all, sees all, and this is capable of foreseeing all things and making the country prosper, an idea beautifully expressed by the gift of the breath of life. But elsewhere, particulars are given, affirmations which no longer permit us to take these words as common flattery. One such example is a text concerning Ramses III, which in itself sums up the tradition of the king's the divine origin, while at the same time evoking the mystery of origin described in the pyramids. In this text, it is said of user Mat Maria and Amun, the power of Ra consciousness attracting Amun is Ramses III. Quote, "The son of Amun Ra, enthroned in his heart, whom he loves more than anything and who is with him. He is the resplendent image of master of the universe and a creation of the Neters in Heliopolis. His divine father has created him in order to increase his splendor. He is the emancipated egg, the sparkling seed raised by the two goddesses of great magic. Amon himself has crowned him on his throne in Heliopolis of Upper Egypt, Erdman. He has chosen him as shepherd of Egypt and defender of men. He is Horus, who protects his father, the elder son of the god, bull of his mother. Ra has begotten him in order to create a brilliant posterity on earth for the salvation of men and as his living image. This text first summarizes the act of conception and shows the king procreated by Ra, the solar principle. It is therefore not the human king who is met, although the the physical father of the king serves as an intermediate into the cosmic power in this child, just as with the Christus conception. There resides the divine and the human, and the paternal king can be placed in parallel with Joseph, the nourishing father. The comparison between the divine conceptions of each one of these royal principles insinuates the precept underlying all of these pharaonic texts. This is the man who will reign, but who is to be overlooked in favor of the cosmic teachings. The divine conception of the king is the object of extensive description. For example, at Deir el Bahari for Har Shi Pul, at the temple of Luxor for Amenophis III. In the text of Ramses III, cited herein, there occurs a rare epithet designating the king as perfect egg. This egg is suggestive of the world egg in the harmonic phase of the myth, laid by a goose on a primordial hillock. The egg plays a very important symbolic role in Hermetic texts. It is the image of the entire Hermetic opus, as the shell represents the corporate salt, the white being the mercury, which can be coagulated by the sulfur effect of the egg yolk. Is indeed the action of the aminated solar yellow, which will form the chick by means of the egg white substance. Another qualification is to be noted. The king is here called shepherd of his flock, as will be the Lord Christ. Is not light the highest perfection, as it attracts and lends the lost? And is it not said here that the king was engendered for the salvation of men? The universal chapter of the cosmic teaching transmitted through these texts is confirmed by the words in this instance which speak of the king's birth and then of his coronation. Next section is called Crown and Coronation. The crown is more than an emblem. It replaces what is the human king's thinking, his destiny, personal character, and in the case of the pharaoh substitutes a neter. In the bas reliefs, the gift of the crown is always conferred by a neter. The function which this neter represents will be transmitted by the crown. This coronation announces a different state, a state of pure intuition. Expressed is the innate knowledge of the neter, the cosmic function which is the Protagonist in man. This might explain why the king never carries out any acts whatever, be it civil proceedings or a temple matter, without asserting that it is the neter itself which is his inspiration or realizes the work. With respect to her opulus, for instance, Hashepal, that certifies to have done nothing but what was directed by Ammon. She has executed her monuments through and for Ammon. The intentions of supporting the personal will is confirmed in the configurations of the king by the insistence with which the skull cap is encircled by a separating mark of one sort or another, a diadem, a joint in the stone blocks, or even by the inlay of a piece brought from another temple. As far as physiology is concerned, the part of the brain thus separated represents the seat of the will and an individualistic thinking, and is quite independent from glands and vital centers. The true understanding of the symbols, the replacement of skull cap by crown, must be found in transformation, which produces a new thinking being. It is indeed only after purification and coronation that the king has the right to officiate in the temple. The true meaning of the royal diadem lies in this figurative separation of a part of the cranium. In ancient Egypt, the royal diadem is designated by MH, which is also the word for the cubit of measure. The circular line of the diadem is indeed the very measure of the royal cubit for each man. It shows the measure of his own cubit. Thus, Pharaoh is not only the son of Ra, that is perfect and divine being, but he also measures the world. Numerous consequences arise from the few points raised here. It is certain that the coronation does not take place at any moment whatsoever, according to the convenience of profane considerations. Its date is always situated so as to conform astrologically with the characteristic features the king will represent in generating his particular phase of pharaonic Egypt. Birth and coronation are certainly situated on an identical radius which intersects the spirals representing temporal becomings. So what he's saying here, real quick, here is that basically they don't do anything unless it conforms to the astrological signs in the sky. You see, it's all done in coordination with that. Nothing is done by accident, so to speak, in the past. And they knew that. And they knew that also because they would be observing the stars at all times. And actually, Osiris is a part of this. Let's continue on. Enthronement is the accession of the king to his actual power. This power symbolizes a phase of the work which corresponds to the king. Thus, Amenhotep is not identical to Throb, Mes, and Ramses, represents a passage of the lunar to the solar. Amenhotep is the Hotep of Amun. In other words, his subliminal or spiritualization. This is explained in the style of the king's basset relief, which are carved superficially with a relief of barely 2 millimeters. 2 millimeters is very close, folks. That's very tiny. Anyway, as at birth of the sun, Ramses draws from matter the Horanian soul, which remains hidden therein. Throughout this dynasty, his vast reliefs are carved progressively deeper into the stone. The king as priest and priest as king section. The great possession of M-I-N, a detailed representation of which can be found in the funeral temple of Ramses III at Medina, that Habu, that's Habu, took place in the first month of the harvest season, SHMU, on the day of the new moon. So everything's done for a reason here. Coordinations or whatever takes place is done for a purpose. They were all astrologically aware of that long ago. So it is very likely that this ceremony coincided with the anniversary date of the sovereign coronation, which was celebrated on the 26th day of that same month. This ceremony brings to mind certain gestures which are part of the enthronement ritual. This might explain something else. They were aware of what was in the sky. They were also true to what was in the sky. The sad part simply is that all changed. A lot of that changed when they changed the calendars. The Romans did that on purpose to keep people from actually knowing what is going on. So they construed to fool the people or keep them that they would know. And some did know, but eventually those people die out, you see. And if it's not passed on, and passed on and on and on, it's gone, you see. And that's why these works are important, as this guy did all this work for 15 years with his wife. Truly amazing. The ceremony of the coming forth of Mem proceeds in 5 episodes. The king leaves his palace and makes his appearance, comparably to the rising sun. His Majesty Ramses III is carried on a palanquin towards the abode of his father, Menka-Mu-F, the bull of his mother, to witness his accomplishments. Wearing the blue Kleppers helmet, the king is seated on a throne flanked by 2 lions and protected by 2 mats. The M-A-A-T-S, sorry. The throne is carried on 2 litters by 12 princes, their heads adorned with feathers. The inscription calls them royal sons and great noblemen. The royal palanquin is preceded by personages in robes of state wearing 2 ostrich plumes on their heads, and who are described as follows: known of the king, his majesty's fathers, the royal sons, the great noblemen, Saru, and all the dignitaries. And so there is a picture here of that. So I'll try to show this for you here. Whoops. So you can see he's being carried. And this is figure 46, the appearance of the king, detail of the first episode of the festival of Mims coming forth. Bas relief, Medina Habud. This is the 20th dynasty. Speculation is rife as to the meaning of the title known of the king as an expression that goes back to the ancient empire. If these persons are only members of the court, as the classic translation would have it, it is difficult to understand why they should have procedures over the princes of royal blood who are mentioned in third place only. By their title, however, which can also be interpreted to mean those of royal knowledge. Their place should be in the first rank. The meaning behind these epithets can be reached with more precision through alternate translations. Known of the king could be rendered as those who know the royal path. Interesting. By which is meant the direct path through Horus. The royal children must be understood in the lighter tradition as the children of science, meaning those who participate in esoteric knowledge. This would account for their subordinate position in the figuration. Following the royal offering comes the solemn procession called the coming forth of Mem. During this ceremony, the statue of Neter is carried on a shield with two feathers on his head and with seals and mummy swats around his neck. A white bull precedes the statue, while the reader, that is the priest, declaims the dance hymn of Mem, and the Blackman of Pun stalls this Neter. Egyptologists are at loss to justify the presence of a black man from Pun among the important personalities of this ceremony. But geographically and historically, this explanation can be of no value on the subject. What is needed is an understanding of this characteristic of men who was a black bull before becoming symbolized by a white bull. So I'm going to show you this particular piece also. Next shown are the statues of the beautified king of Upper and Lower Egypt, which will become the object of the reigning king's cult. Once the statue of Mem is set down upon a temporary altar formed of steps, the king released 4 birds bearing the names of the 4 sons of Horus. The hieroglyph like of the stairway, which designates Mem's altar, should be considered as the functional determinant of this image. It is a ascension whose character is underlined by the feathers on the head of Mem's white bull and by the flight of the birds. In the presence of the royal and accessory statues of the white bull, a priest offers the king a freshly cut shield of spelt, as well as a sickle of black copper inlaid with gold. As certain members of the clergy recite the formula 7 times while circling the king. The latter makes the gesture of cutting the sheaf with his sickle, raises it to his nose, and deposits it in front of Mem, in further allusion to a flutification or oration. Once the ceremony is over, the statue is returned to its nados, and the king performs the libation and incense offering according to the roles or the rules of the daily cult. The ceremony of the flight of birds here represents on the occasion of Mem's coming forth, in part of the ritual of the royal coronation and of his renewal, the Set festival. After the purification, the latter mainly comprises the attribution of the crowns of the south and of the north by Seth and Horus, and then the unification of the two lands on the defeat of the king. That is in figure 48. The name of the pharaoh is then written on the fruits of the Persia trees by thought. And lastly, four birds are released towards the four directions in order to announce the royal accession to the respective divinities of the four cardinal points. This rite is sometimes accompanied by the archery scene, where Seth and then Horus successively hold the king's shoulders so as to direct arrows to the 4 points of the horizon. In principle, an abridged version of the coronation ritual is repeated each day before the ritual of the divine daily cult, or it is always the royal principle which acts as a priest in the temple bas reliefs. This royal principle is the radiant power which emanates all life. The man here is no longer of any importance. Of value is the significance of this royal principle only in everything this Poseidon is able to perform. This is what analysis of the cult shows us so generously. A text on the wall also enclosing the temple of Efu relates the existence of a testament of Ra. He's said to be the first king of Egypt, bequeathing to the son of Osiris and Isis, the king, all the land of the south and north, and all the qualities reserved for Ra as creator. It is true that there is a myth which teaches the theonomy, a myth which becomes the theological basis on which the temple and the empire was founded, or are founded, I should say. And if, on the other hand, a fusion is made between the human king who reigns in the principle of this myth, then one or the other will be open to question. The indefinable character of unity concealed in Ra, acting through Hop, the bull, during a particular time, and then through Ammon, the ram, during another time. This abstract character would not suit the reigning king were it truly that king to which the cited texts refer. It is equally evident in the account of the battle of Kadesh that it could not possibly be the reigning king who is involved. This warrior single-handedly slays thousands of enemies and destroys thousands of combat chariots. It is meaninglessly to attempt to speak of this royal aspect in ancient Egypt without correctly situating the king and his actions. It is equally unproductive to approach these writings in a historical frame of mind and to collect what they really are, a constant reminder of the secret of sacred science, the opus magnum, of which the Franciscans say in his text, quote, "Let us commence then in the name of God the great work, so called because nothing on earth surpasses it." End quote. Her, known in his Latinized form of Horus, specifically signifies face. Horus is the face, the sensoria perceptible appearance of the invisible Ra. The appearance of this face is a realization through the view, the work of cosmic genesis from the beginning. Horus is held prisoner, held earthbound by his brother Seth. He is the divine light, carried along by what has become sensorily perceptibly through Tum, the primordial hillock which issued from Nun, the domain of celestial archangels. This occurs through the irrationalist act, which is the beginning of becoming the renowned secret. All texts of all times, in one form or another, repeat exactly the same thing. Pharaonic myth shows Seth and Horus as enemies, the one and the other. Plato's same and the other. The fundamental schisms is of what Lasty called Tao Ko Tao, what is and is not, being and not being. All these in one single state, which becomes accessible only through the initial schism of Fa Chan Tan, where the idiom Fa, Fa, is double and opposed. The end of the completed Genesis, the ultimate realization is the union in friendship rather than in enemy. In enmity. image of Seth and Horus. They will become what is affirmed by the Emerald Tablet, and its force or Pusanan is entire if becomes converted into earth. It is the strong strength of all strength. And as the text specifies, this means that all must become a living and fixed fire beyond the reach of any destructive fire. By fire, it means the spiritual potency which gives life to all things. Just, excuse me, just as the tender warmth of ordinary fire commonly sustains life. The final union of the elements which were originally opposed is what Hermeticus calls the stone, the thing which acts as a ground for the universal edifice. This is the king par excellence. It is the son of Ra. Who is like Ra? The son of heaven, generally speaking, is in this solidly king. The two crowns are unified, the silver-white crown of the south, that is Seth, and the golden red crown of the north, being Horus. This is the king to which the diaramid texts refer. The human king is but the symbol, the image, the recall, the evocation of the real driven divine king, the true king by the grace of God. Horus as an appearance, the color of Ra, in the beginning must be delivered from his corporate prison, as the soul of the mortal beings must likewise be saved. In the end, he will be the divine specification of the perfect being. Horus, therefore, is related to all the phases of Genesis until man, and then from man to glorious resurrection. The universe Horus is in all that lives. The divine Logos is in all beings, and when Saint Francis preaches to the fishes and the birds, he speaks in the name of such truth. The Pharaonic temple anthropologizes principles and functions without humanizing them. The spiritual conception of Amun Ra, the pure and perfect birth of the royal infant under the auspice of the celestial forces, his baptism and his naming, all that is told in the Theogony chamber of the temple of Lazar. This is a reality, unsituation in time. The father Amun Ra is shown in place of Thaumius IV, the terrestrial father through whom he acts. The mother is the spiritual conception, is Mut. Sorry, I said it wrong. Mut in Una, Mut in the Baroque, Mut, feminine conceiving in the bark, which floats upon the hours of the day. This is what is said by the royal sponsor, the royal mother, Mut Manuni, in the presence of the majesty of this august Neter. Among twice great are thy souls. Thy union with me is a beautiful thing. Thy divine dew is in all my members as Prince of Thebes. Amon takes up the queen's words and announces that the future king, the child, will be Amonhotep Hektuus, the symbol of a historical phase in the pharaonic opus. The Hotep of Amon is as leaven of the rising flux. I got to show you something here. I'll show this to you right here. The child, having been thus conceived in perfection, is announced by Clemenumoi, the divine potter from Ephantine, who will fashion the child and give it forms more beautiful than that of all the Neters. This promise is illustrated by cognitival action. He confers the proposals of an adult on the future king as well as on his ka. This child is brought into the world with the assistance of celestial principles. Next, it is nourished with the milk of the heavenly cow, the milk which allows all beings to live. Theonia and theology, the doctrines of metaphysical powers, and in the beginning of being, its maintenance and return to its source. Astronomical, the science of cosmic harmony and celestial influence. Medicine, the relation of the living body with cosmic influx and its relation with metaphysical power. These three faculties are but one single science. It aims not only at the experimental revelation of what is taught by the three disciplines, but also at the realization of the perfect being, who is the aim of existence, the king of the tangible world by the grace of God. The king's government is identical with his own self-definition. The laws of his becoming are the laws which govern visible life and life in the Dwa, the world of transformation for those human beings still feathered by the mortal body. The Pharaoh and his government are the image of this reality. They are intangible symbols. The next section is called the Set, S-E-D, Festival. There exists a concept, obviously, to the sages of all times, the meaning and the very possibility of which are totally beyond the understanding of rationalist thinking, the concept of quantitative exaltation. This notion does not concern the elimination of impurities in order to retain the pure, unadulterated quality. Instead, exaltation refers to a kind of a spiritualization of the thing, characterizing quality. It is possible to bring simple chemical bodies such as gold and silver to states of purity that are absolute for all practical purposes. They are then perfectly themselves, but only themselves and nothing more, nothing beyond their own quality, characterized by a variety of typical aspects such as density, atomic weight, color, and malleability, etc. This silver and this gold are incapable of transmuting their quality to another metal. They have nothing to give without losing something of themselves. They are not a leaven, as in the HEQ. One of the king's sepulchres is the shape of a hook. I'll share that with you also here. Another diagram. So this is a bas relief in the so-called Botanical Gardens, Thrames III, detailed of the west wall in Karnak. Strictly speaking, the action of fermentation concerns transmutation in its corporative aspect. Belief in this possibility implies a radical reversal of the materialistic foundation of rational science. It must be understood that these are not the atomic transmutations of our catch can automatists who destroy one edifice in order to erect another out of the salvaged materials. The principle of true transmutation is totally different. It demands a quantitative exaltation of the thing and is based on the following fact. In a millennial assumed to be a substance without body that is of nameless energy, unless we choose to call it spirit, a stipend force comes to concretely this substance in order to define it spatially, to form a body. The only possibility of exalting the quality of this thing, therefore, is to exalt the contracting force which is carries, but which at first had brought it only to its present characteristic state. This exaltation has no common measure with a multiplication, as in the instance of one wheat kernel yielding a stalk of 30 to 60 new grains. So multiplication is characteristic of all seed and is nothing but regeneration, a faculty of vegetation. There is a kinship between the effect of a ferment and that of a leaven in bread, but even more so with the phenomena of gene mutation. The principle of quantitative exaltation can be illustrated by the transcendence of the sweetbriar to the rose. This intention of modifying the ferment of the seed explains the incidence of its radiological proliferation in plants represented on the walls of the so-called Botanic Gardens of the Set Festival Temple of Thorius III in Karnak. Here it is here. An instance of proliferation after terminating in one flower, this inflorescing beyond the secondary stem develops a bud which produces leaves, hence a vivid parody that is a new plant. Excerpt from Museum of Paris Bulletin. Classical Egyptology has hitherto considered these cases of abnormal proliferation, the fantasy representation of artists, that is. Yet a report from the Paris Museum of Natural History describes two cases of proliferation as observed in 1878 in the museum greenhouse aquarium. This is going to be showing that. So this is a bas relief in the so-called botanical garden detail of the west wall. Without illustration until now is the genus Nymphalia. This fact shows once again how characteristics are formed and proves the spontaneity of their appearance. It must be said, however, that this spontaneity is not surprising, that it is manifested everywhere in everything. Furthermore, were it better interpreted, it could explain a number of things or facts. In reality, it reflects the well-known definite maxim, let there be matter, in which is the manifestation. From the sculptured water lilies in the botanic gardens of the Set Festival Temple, we see that the ancients were not only acquainted with this phenomena of tetralogical proliferation, but also knew its causes, as the latter contributed to the character of quantitative exaltation represented by the Set Festival. These carvings further confirm our affirmation that in ancient Egypt nothing is to be attributed to chance or fantasy. The deeper motivation for every anomaly must be sought, and such motivations might very well escape our rational mentality. In this hall, the following text is to be found. All the strange plants, all the flowers which are in the divine order bound by His Majesty when His Majesty had gone to Upper Retinum in order to stop there. Huh, that's weird. Okay, then subdue all countries according to the order of his father Ammon, who placed them beneath his sandals from this day on until merits of years. Then I'm going to show you another particular deal here. Sorry about that. His Majesty thus says, I swear on my life by the love of Ra, by the grace of Ammon, all these things happen in truth. No lie have I written here. The souls of my mastery have made them be born and become in order to glorify his nourishments. My Majesty has achieved this through love in order to place them in the presence of my father Ammon in the great temple of Akhamennu forever and ever. Along with Rene naturalist agrees that the plants and animals represented in the botanical garden are typical African that is. This contradicts the text asserting their provenance from the divine land and from Upper Retindo, which translates as Syria, where the king had gone presumably to subjugate all the countries. Taken literally, such a text would make no sense whatsoever. Divine land in Upper Retina must therefore be understood as allusion to the eastern and solar character of the millennial capable of gestation, these strange plants. The poetic and mystical character of the king's word, moreover, prompts a search for deeper significance. In order to approach the esoteric of the problem, the symbology of the locust must be recalled, equally valid for both India and Egypt. It is seen that the lotus has its roots in the earth, grows in and by means of water, that its leaves are nourished by air, and its flowers by the sun's fire. Thus, the lotus symbolizes the four elements of the earth. Sorry, the four elements being earth, water, air, and fire. Didn't know that. Didn't know that at all. When I go out here near my house, there are lotus flowers with on the water, and it's amazing. And I didn't know that. Didn't know that. So kind of learned something here. The lotus flowers represent the final product, not only regenerated but exalted, as the carvings show. From it springs a new leaf hair, a bud, coagulation, and one of several new flowers. The first flower constitutes a new earth, a solar earth, capable of exaltation represented by the leaves, the buds, and the flowers that spring from it. Philosophically, such as exaltation finds its culmination in the absolute, practically as soon as the concretized force can no longer be detained in its bodily form. It returns to a spiritual source. This is the true meaning of exaltation of the mortal towards the immortal. The king is that force, that firmament, the Set Festival, a ceremony whose significance continues to puzzle Egyptologists, specifies the gesture of quantitative exaltation of the king, that is, meaning life, health, and strength. Seth means tail, S-E-D means tail, the prolongation of the spinal cord towards the ground, the renewal of the life that emanates the column of fire, for the earth is its nurse. A number of symbols attest to the significance of this particular festival. Two of these suffice to remove all doubt as to its particular meaning. One of these symbols is formed by two thrones set back to back in a special pavilion. The king is seated on these thrones, his two fists placed one on top of the other and holding the scepters. On one of the thrones, he is wearing a white robe, only on the other, a red robe. Show you this real quick. The other image, more subtle, is architecture. The columns of Ptolemaeus III Festival Hall in this particular festival temple have the shape of the cutout delineated by columns with capitals in the form of full-blown papyrus plants. The symbol brings to mind the concretization of spirit in the void, eliminated by living and vegetating matter. These columns are in the image of the pickets in the Set Festival Pavilion. So the left meaning the red, what they call the fragment of a bas relief carnal, right upper section of a naos drawn on papyrus. Like Osiris, the king must die in order to be renewed in a more perfect state. He must pass once again through the phases of the white crown and the red crown, for only the return of the concrete thing to the primordial state can offer it a heightening of the concretizing force. The mystery of the Set Festival, the celebration of regeneration, entails the ceremony of rebirth, a return to the womb for a new gestation in order to be reborn in a higher state. Symbology, the king must pass through an animal skin, the Taikanua, always associated with the mystery of Osiris renewal. Alexander Morey recalls scenes in Beta ritual that are very similar to the Set Festival rites, and concerning which there exists explicit commentary. The celebrant who offers the sacrifice is to be reborn to another existence. He is to be divinized by being made to die on earth and to be reborn in heaven. Then the Diksa intervenes, that is the Diksa, is a set of preliminary ceremonies serving to deify the human creature. A special structure is erected for the celibate who is performing this particular ritual. A black antelope skin is put on him. The building is the womb. The black antelope skin is the chlorine. The garment is the amanin. The belt is the umbilical cord. He who performs discus is an emerald. This ceremony is the passion play of pharaonic Egypt, a symbol now taken for no more than a tale. The deeper sense of the ritual, which concerns every human being, is no longer understood. The king per Aa, the great house of the Neter, or Pharaoh, is the living image of the incarnation of a return to the source of the divine word. It is a ever-present fact which the king's persona makes tangible to the people. Such is the only true and great meaning of royalty as an idea. Achieved through this symbol is the superimposition of several essential moments, a genesis of the empire in which the symbol of the king evokes as the phases change. Then the principles of Genesis, where the king represents a epitome of the entire history, colored by what he symbolizes at his particular moment. Once again, this is the image of the large world where the becoming, where the genesis of a solar system contains each genesis of the being that inhabit it in the image of the all. And that is the conclusion of chapter 10 here tonight. I hope that you understood this. Hope that I was able to share with you this particular book. I may share some other things here, but not tonight. It would be later on this week, probably, because there are appendices here. I'd like to share some other things he has here. But at this point, I've done a couple videos today, and both of them have been approximately an hour long. So I appreciate you being here, and thank you for your goodness to me. And I wish you a good night, and you take care. Bye-bye.